As a little bit of background before getting more into this section, I want to talk about some advanced function definitions and calling forms. When you define a function, like I define a function, funct xyz, most of the time, programmers are familiar with the idea of saying, okay, you call that function and you give it 3 arguments. Or maybe you pass in keyword arguments, like you could say funct1, z is 3, y equals 2. So functions have these 2 different ways of passing arguments. You can pass arguments by position, you can pass them by keyword. One of the things that you might see, though, is a function that uses the star in a final argument, like you could say funct x star args. What this is it's a function that will take any number of extra positional arguments. Like you have to call the function with at least 1 argument, but if you were to pass other arguments, they get collected in a tuple and then handed off to you in args. So it's a function that takes any number of inputs. Any extra inputs will go in that args tuple. There's a related concept for keyword arguments, like if you had a function x, you use double star like that. What's going to happen here is this is a function that takes at least 1 argument, but then it will take any set of extra keyword arguments that you want to provide. So if you had different arguments kind of passed like that, they would actually get placed into a dictionary, handed off to you. If you don't have any extra arguments, then you get an empty dictionary. Okay, so this is a way of taking keyword arguments. And then there's a third form. You might see a function that uses both the star and the double star together. This is a function that takes any combination of arguments whatsoever. You can call it with no arguments. You can call it with positional arguments. You can call it with some mix of positional arguments. Doesn't matter. What it will do is separate the 2 different arguments into kind of 2 groups. Anything that's provided by position goes into a tuple, which is the args. And then anything that's provided by keyword goes into a dictionary, which is the quargs there. So these are more advanced function definitions that you might see. I also want to mention that if you have a function, let's say you had a function ABCD like that, you can call a function using tuples or dictionaries as well. For instance, if you had args was equal to 1, 2, and then you had kw args was equal to like C is equal to 3 and D is equal to 4, like that, one of the things that you can do is say funct star args, star star keyword args, and it will assemble that information into a function call. Also, like if you had data, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you said funct star data, it will treat the elements of that tuple as if they were independent function arguments. One of the places where this comes into play is in writing what's known as a wrapper function sometimes. Like if I had a function add xy like this, what somebody might do is they would write, maybe like an add wrapper, for instance, that takes any set of arguments in and then maybe adds some code like wrapping or something like that. And then you could call the original function. What's actually happening here is this serves as kind of like a pass-through. I mean, you can call this add wrapper with the same arguments you would use to add, and what will happen is they'll just kind of seamlessly pass through to the other function, even if you use something like keyword arguments. So you'll see these things used, sort of more advanced code will sometimes make use of the star and the double star to do things like variable numbers of arguments, keyword arguments, wrapper functions, and things like that. Now, we're going to see some more advanced uses of this in the next section as we start to talk about decorators.